So we'll see if she matches today. I welcome you, Silvia Christmann. Let's give her a warm round of applause.
Thank you, Jackie. Thank you so much. And yes, she's correct. I'm actually wearing the exact same thing. Life of a nomad, right? I have limited space in my suitcase, and that's just how it is. I didn't plan it that way. It just turned out to be this way. My name is Silvia. I'm a growth coach and advisor to impact founders, CEOs, executives, and just about anybody that wants to build a life outside of convention. I would attribute the 3 keys to my success that I have learned how to leverage wellness and place self-care at the forefront of my daily routine, and that I have mastered the art of failing forward, because I don't really consider myself a success story at all. I've just learned how to master the million different facets of fear along the way. And on top of that, I have chosen to place my personal need for freedom above everything else. I say that because I'm somebody who just can't follow rules, right? I've never have been. I tend to wear life like a loose garment. I, fundamentally have a really hard time fitting in. I don't pay attention to details. I'm a really, really terrible planner, and logistics are often beyond me. So I had to find a way to make that work for me. I also think that I was born that way. I think the freedom gene runs in my family. I think it's in my karmic footprint, and it's certainly been in any astrological chart I've ever seen drawn for my person. Even numerology would agree that my life evolves around certain facts. I love freedom, I love adventure. I tend to indulge life with all of my senses. I'm extremely impulsive, and if I don't follow that, I seem to be rather trapped. I also say that when I say that I was born that way, I say that because I was actually born a really sickly child. So I came into this world struggling and fighting for my life. Where Western medicine failed, homeopathy and a very, very restricted diet saved my life. It did, however, mean that I needed to eat every 2 hours, that I needed a lot of extra care, and my immune system remained very fragile throughout most of my life. It was, restricting on good days. It was debilitating in the worst of times. It also makes you kind of an outsider, because kids are cruel, right? If you're the kid with special diet requirements, you're not really on top of the guest list for a birthday party. When you show up with your own little cake and the sugar-free sweets, it's not cool. Nobody wants that. In addition to that, I was an outsider, but I was also an outsider because I kind of marched to the tunes of my own voice, right? I had a tendency to live in my own world and create my own reality. That was topped up by the fact that my mom dragged us around the world from a very early age. So my passport was maxed out at the age of 5. So when I came home after vacations to school, the kids were talking about television shows and video games, and I was trying to fit in talking about adventures around the world and weird foods that I ate. Also, people didn't really want me. So I learned at a very young age to listen to my heart and not look for outside validation, because I was not getting it anywhere. My mom decided that with my need for freedom and inability to fit in, it was a good idea to send me to a hippie school. And that was a really good idea because their rules weren't really placed upon me. I was, it harnessed my authenticity, as they called it. There was a lot of playtime throughout the day, and I was allowed to be different, right? I was allowed to be free-spirited. That, however, did not change the outside circumstances surrounding my life and my upbringing. So there were many different shadows along my path, and I don't actually think that they're more or less than other people's. I do know, though, that at the age of 17, I was diagnosed with post-traumatic stress syndrome. The traumas that I had experienced had gotten too much for me. I was stuck in a paralysis, and the shell-shock paralysis, and a completely overwhelmed mind because I could not process the things that had happened. At the same time, if I'm really honest, it's probably the best thing that ever happened to me. For somebody who really already doesn't feel like they belong to the world, that was just a ticket to freedom. Because it allowed me, through the process of recovery and reclaiming my life, to really decide that I was going to create a life, A, unlike my past, and B, completely away from convention. It set me free. When you have nothing to lose, you kind of have everything to gain. So that drive, combined with my already existing delusions of grandeur, really began my journey. There was nothing going to hold me back. There was no one going to tell me that I, as a young woman, wasn't going to be able to do this or that, or travel here, or do this. I just went. I bought my first ticket, my first one-way ticket, and the first of many to come to this day, to Brazil. I arrived at 2 o'clock in the morning, without a plan, without a place to stay, not really knowing what I wanted to do there. But logistical details like that were never really fazed me at all. That is just how I live. I went from one adventure to the next. I jumped off cliffs. I jumped out of airplanes. I went wherever the wind would take me. I found great joy in living dangerously. I was the person that got in the car with strangers. I went and did anything that felt like a really good idea. I was an adrenaline junkie and a thrill seeker. I was completely reckless. I was completely fearless, and I had a fantastic time. I loved every minute of it. The only thing was that after about a year or so, my body and my health did not keep up. It wasn't something that I could do. And there was also a part of me that, even though I did anything I wanted that felt like a good idea, couldn't find anything that fit. I didn't know what I wanted, tried it all, didn't find something that fit. It was time for me to find a place where I could kind of come to and find a little restfulness, so I went and sought out my father, who lived in the United States, in South Carolina. And so this hippie chick shows up in their suburban sort of house, like, hey, I'm here. And they lived a very different kind of life. They went to the country club, they played tennis, they placed value on material things that were really beyond me, and their household had rules that were beyond my comprehension. But in exchange to hanging out, I tried to fit in, right? And it seemed to have this illusion of safety and stability that I really wanted, and it was alluring, because stability was something I had never even seen. So I tried, Went to school, I played tennis, I dressed the part, I spoke the part, I had polite conversations. I graduated with honors from college. I got my first job in this startup because I loved the hustle. I made money, I bought a condo, I got a boyfriend, and I created this picture-perfect life. The only thing missing was a picket fence and maybe 2.5 children. But it wasn't my life, I was living somebody else's dream, right? It was something I wanted to experience. Didn't suit me at all. So I left that. I decided that I was going to go where I could follow my need for hustle and flow. I went to New York City, I bought a one-way ticket, left a note, rented out the condo, sold everything else. I joined another startup. We went from 4 people with a plastic table and fold-out chairs to a team of 80, and I stayed with them until we hit the first million. Today they make about 20 million a year. I loved every minute of it, and I will never tell you that I didn't. The startup hustle is definitely my game. There was just a component of it that still didn't work. Even though my life looked exciting on the outside, I came home at night and I would watch that ceiling fan go round and round and round in circles, wondering if that was all there was. I kept changing my outsides to try to figure out how to fit the insides. I was dead on the inside. That paralysis that was dragging around with me from, early on, still had a hold on me. Maybe adrenaline made me feel alive, but there was still something missing. Something fundamentally had to change. So as a mess of starting over, going to a new country, new job, new whatever, it didn't really feel very appealing to me, right? Like, been there, done that, didn't change anything. Everywhere I went, there I was. So I decided this time I was going to take the only road I hadn't taken. And that was inward. I obviously quit my job, quit my life, sold my stuff, bought a one-way ticket, right? Because what else does one do? And but this time I went and sought out teachers and people all across the world that knew a little bit more than I did about living in alignment with oneself. And that was what changed it all, right? Because I got in touch with my biggest fears, my deepest desires, and the things I really wanted. So instead of living fast and furious, chasing adventures, I learned how to, live in a more mindful transition from one adventure to the next that honored my values and had more of I practiced the art of ambition, where I didn't end up in burnout, right? Yoga, meditation, and spiritual practices certainly became a huge component of my life. And in addition to that, of course, a great deal of what I call New Age shenanigans, right? Like I tried it all. I did anything from breath workshops to scream therapy to like dance therapy to Vedic meditation, Vipassanas, silent meditation, dance meditation, scream therapy. I learned how to use tantric practices to infuse my body, or temple as we want to call it that, with a different kind of energy and different forms of pleasure. And I definitely spent some months, weeks, whatever, in an ashram speaking gibberish for days and days at a time. It was designed to bypass the dictates of your thinking by not using language at all. It's fascinating, and I still love it. I still love doing these things, and it really changed it all. The most important factor to me was that I found people with whom I had a lot in common, right? I found the other lovers of life, the other people that consistently needed to leave, learn, grow, and change. So I no longer felt alone or alienated or different. What that looks like for me today is that I still place wellness at the forefront of my daily routine, right? So every day, diet is really the most important thing. This temple is fragile. I have to be careful on what I eat. I stay away from sugar, alcohol, anything that's too stressful. I don't eat dairy or gluten. Dead animals, no dead animals, for the most part. I don't want them because they carry a lot of trauma when they die, and I had enough of that in my own life. I don't really need to eat it. And I love green juices. I love starting my day with hot water and lemon, right, to ease into the day, and have practices that allow me to stay in motion, right? I travel a lot. Half my suitcase is full of dietary supplements and powdered versions of the foods I may not be able to get in countries I visit. I take great care of my sleep. I have evening routines where I ease into the evening, I take hot showers and just have my routine so that I have a high quality of sleep, not just 8 hours, but I pay attention to the quality I get. And when you travel a lot, it can be rather difficult because you're sleeping somewhere else every other day or maybe every 4 days. So for me, it's about having that routine, not using electronic devices before I sleep, essential oils, an eye mask, earplugs, so that there's consistency no matter where I am in the world. Exercise. I'm just someone who needs to stay in motion, right? So I have my running shoes, I have my yoga mat with me. I listen to music all the time because I always say, move a muscle, change a thought, get into your body before you do anything else. It's how I start my day, it's how I deal with life. The other day, I was feeling a little overwhelmed with things that were placed upon me, so I took my running shoes, I ran down to the beach, I did yoga, and even that wasn't really working, so I put on a soundtrack and I just started dancing out on the rocks. Like nobody's watching, right? And it feels so good to allow yourself to do that. The biggest component of this, for me, is practicing mental fitness. Is making sure that I keep my mind in an equanimous state. When your life evolves around the values of change, growth, expansion, and adventure, you're gonna have to come to understand your fears. Because I don't know about you, but I have great goals, and most of the time, it looks a little bit like that. I fail forward, sometimes gracefully, sometimes not so much. I make a lot of mistakes all the time, and I had to learn how to not be afraid of that. Fear is not something that you get rid of. Fear is something that you embrace. To me, I had to learn how to take these fears and transmute them so that they can turn into excitement. And that shame does not dictate my choices today. I make sure that I look at the stories in my head, that they're not tied to social conventions and false expectations. I make sure that I don't let my undisciplined mind get the best of me. So I practice mindfulness and self-awareness and gratitude to consistently stay present with myself, what's right in front of me, and the people in my life. Above all, I practice freedom as a discipline. I had to learn how to create a container and a framework in which I can harness this energy so that my impulses don't drive me astray. And that means that I surround myself with people that I have a lot in common with, so I'm not sitting across from people that tell me that I can't do the things I want to do. If you want to live in a dynamic life, find your tribe. Honor the energy. Follow that flow. For me, playfulness and movement are essential because I find myself time and time again abandoning projects if I'm not enjoying it. So if I practice joy while I'm executing the plans and the projects that I want, I know I can get to the end of it. Changing my life in this way has very naturally started bringing in clients and people that not only wanted to learn how to create businesses that have an impact, that cater to the changing needs of this world, but they also wanted to know what it feels like to be fully alive. And all of a sudden, my life felt completely aligned with who I wanted to be, where I want to be, the people I want to hang out with, and the impact I want to have on the world around me. So I'm going to leave you with this. My life today feels real. It's vibrant, it's cracked, it's flawed. It's full of missteps, mistakes, and sometimes even good judgment. It's full of love, heartbreak, and true pleasure. And above all, I feel free to be. So thank you so much for being here today, and thank you for my life.